So, all right. Hi guys, thanks a lot for joining in. We have this amazing panel of people from around the world who will have the discussion about DAOs and their impact in the Web3 space. So yeah, like I'll like to invite Daniel, Aman, Indy, and Indy or Ingi, like how do I say, like, Ingi?
You can pronounce Ingi.
Oh, okay, great. And Nicole, and it's really great to have you all. Just a quick introduction about HanDAO. HanDAO is a creators DAO, mostly based out of Korea, but with a global presence. And yeah, and Code States or like States DAO is a Web3 decentralized DAO incubator. IndiGG is a sub-DAO of YGG and based out of India. APAC DAO is a DAO of startup founders, influencers, and entrepreneurs based out of Vietnam and very active in the APAC region. Yeah, so welcome all of you, and like thanks for taking the time. Today, yeah, we'll touch like a very high level of like DAOs and like try to go through, because I mean you guys have been doing so much in like the DAO space and the Web3 space. It's I think we can all like learn quite a lot from your experiences. So as a first starting point, like maybe we can like go through your experiences of like how and like why you started the DAO, and or like joined the DAO, and like thought of like doing it in a DAO model, and like how you grew it and the challenges you faced. Maybe we can like start with Daniel.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Sid. And yeah, big fans of what you guys have been doing with Fracton. So I helped set up HanDAO, which is as you said, a Korean creators DAO. My day job is in blockchain infra. I had the protocols team at Stakefish, a proof of stake validator, and lead the special projects team at F2 Pool, proof of work mining pool. But HanDAO essentially started from a place. It didn't start as a DAO. It started more as an initiative to kind of help coordinate and collaborate with artists. So for some context, back when I think the NFT boom was sort of heating up at the end of 2020, I was quite critical of how people were attributing value to NFTs. And I think this was still when people had thought that the 10K PFP, or this is actually even before the 10K PFP, but like the CryptoPunks narrative was right, value because of hype. And right, that was when like Three Arrows Capital was like sweeping up a lot of the CryptoPunks floors and then sort of artificially inflating that type of demand. And I had taken issue with it. I was sort of like a CryptoPunks hater, like not when it first had come out many years ago, but when I think people are saying like, oh, it's going to be valuable because it's valuable in these influencers here. And so I was like, hey, there's like, I understood how the NFT standard was built and how it was supposed to be a lot more than just sort of like this speculative hype value. And so I was looking into a way of like, okay, how do we help people understand that there's more to NFTs and the tech itself that is beyond just the image, that for a fact that does not even need to be included with the NFT itself, right? It's just like a piece of metadata that's optional. And so I was like, yeah, there's like a small group of people of a particular ethnicity that is kind of controlling the narrative. And if you control the narrative, you can control hype, value, and speculation. And I didn't think that was really great for the rest of the ecosystem. Like, mind you, like it's not just a particular section of the world that gets to decide what is valuable or not, right? There's a lot of us out here, right? We were here at the, right, like the Web3 Asia sort of summit. There's Koreans, Indians, Chinese, Vietnamese, everywhere that get to
Yeah.
contribute and determine. We all participate in this global consensus of what we decide, instead of looking to a particular group that has, you know, certain cultural values that get to decide. And so I was like, hey, what's the best way to be able to kind of help introduce more ideas around NFT value, and what better way to do it through sort of these cultural values? I am, right, Korean by blood. I was not born in Korea, but I lived in Korea for like quite a while. Also lived there as an adult when I was building a startup. But it was, yeah, we just basically need more voices in the chat. We needed more, if we were able to help organize collectively and have this sort of union among sort of like a cultural force that can contribute a unique sort of unique input to the conversation, then you can have this discovery of more value that comes not just from hype, from a particular cultural or ethnic background. And so we were getting a bunch of people, and I had actually a sort of like a fun story, like been a big fan of this artist called Mr. Misang. He had actually contributed to like this artwork for a foreign policy blog post on a Korean sort of phenomenon called, you know, pardon my language, like fuck you spending. There's like this phenomenon in Korea called like, and his artwork has always sort of been like this cultural and sort of socioeconomic sort of like had a lot of socioeconomic metaphors in it, and it always stuck with me. And this is, I think, in 2017 or 2018. And I was following him on Instagram, and one day he was posting on his story saying like, hey, I'm having trouble like getting this thing on super rare. Like I'm having trouble setting my reserve like prices. And I reached out to him and said, hey, like I'm a developer. I know how to like, I've launched my own NFT, smart contracts. I understand how the metadata works. And so I helped him through it. Right. And then he went off to become the #1 grossing super rare artist in sales. And then I just started sort of like teaching other artists. There was people who like Nakta, like 08 AM. There's a bunch of other NFT artists in Korea, or artists in Korea who are getting into NFTs. And I was helping them. Okay, you don't want to mint on OpenSea because this is shared contracts for NFTs. You want to be able to mint off your own self-sovereign sort of smart contract. You want to be able to use just decentralized storage like IPFS or Arweave. You have to understand like how you can go through that process. And then you truly, as an artist, can make use and benefit from the value proposition that cryptocurrency and blockchains can provide. So I started doing like this education. I was helping pay gas fees because gas fees were quite high. And then it became like other people like, hey, like who are also crypto native and have been around for a while. Hey, let me help. And so this sort of started as like this gathering and like, okay, we can kind of solidify and consolidate our efforts sort of as like this Korean scene, and especially to support artists, because NFTs have been, as most people have realized, the killer app and killer use case of crypto, one of many, but one of the big ones that really did take off, because DeFi didn't really take off as the killer app that we all thought it would earlier on. And so that's when we was like, okay, there's this concept of DAOs. There's this like global like distribution. There's like Korean artists from like France, from Korea, America, Australia, you know, Latin America. They're all contributing and want to be part of this. And then what best way to govern it through like operators who are able to like do this in like a decentralized way. And then this is sort of like makes sense towards like what the ethos of crypto is supposed to be. And so then that's why we had created HanDAO. And that's the start of it. And then obviously a lot has changed with HanDAO, especially when you're kind of comparing the differences between like the frameworks that are used and necessary and or even just sufficient for like investment type DAOs versus social DAOs, and the tokenomics that are involved. So that's like kind of like the long story.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think it's no, it's all right. It's all right. It's amazing though. Like, you know, we'd love to learn more. Nicole, maybe you would like to do like a brief like, you know, intro to how you started like APAC DAO and how it is going.
Sure. So I think just want to kind of share with everyone a bit about us. We started from Vietnam, but for now we have been pretty much over Asia. So we have, I think, 800 members for now from 15 countries. And we're trying to be as global as possible because, I mean, it's Web3 and it's blockchain. So basically, when it comes to local partnership, we will be able to be there to support them. But in the meantime, we want everyone to have a more kind of global mindset, you know, when they develop their projects. I really like this question because I think it's very personal. It kind of gives, I think, the speakers here to have some sort of personal experiences and personal stories with DAO. I'm actually still learning about this. I'm very new. But then the thing is that I have been working in community, like doing community building in the last 7 years, like 6-7 years, like across like Asia. And then, I mean, I just started this APAC DAO like actually just 4 months ago. And we have been growing exponentially in the past couple of months, thanks to the network and the connections of myself and of the members. And I think it started as a very small group first, just to get to know the others, you know, meet the others in person and refer quality connections or quality partners to the other project. So it started very small, but then I think people really like the idea of a non-biased community that we can actually, you know, have a lot of references about what kind of projects, what kind of countries, or what kind of verticals are, you know, like trending these days, or what kind of partners should I look for, let's say in Vietnam or Indonesia, for example. So I did notice that, of course, like there are a lot of these communities running around, but then basically when you want to have a non-biased and an open kind of community where you can actually, of course, like feel free to share everything about your project and connect with the others, it's still like missing a lot in Asia. So that's why I think we have been able to grow that much. So for now on this kind of community, what we want to do is that we want to support the communities on two sides. First of all is on the talent hiring. And the second is on a decentralized launchpad model. So we want to, since now we have a very diverse group of members, so we're thinking that instead of maybe going to a very costly centralized launchpad service, why don't we kind of launch a project within this community? We have everyone that can make this possible and at a much lower cost. And the incentives that people would get is from the project and also from APAC DAO as well. So we do want people to consider this as a trusted network, you know, to help them in the first place. And it's not just for the launching period, but it's going to be for the post-launch period as well, when people can actually program their commitments with the project through APAC DAO. So I think what I really like about the DAO concept, we actually haven't been able to fully launch the DAO model just yet. But I think I do agree with Daniel on the point that you can actually validate your values among the community. And I think with tokenization and with the token economics, that's very powerful with the DAO. So basically, instead of a normal traditional model that you have to kind of follow, you know, some pre-existing value touch points, you have to really kind of go for it. Now you can create these value touch points by these models. So basically for the DAO right now, we can actually incentivize people based on the desired behavior that we want them to do, you know, either refer, either introduce people, either connect people, either contribute or engage in the community. Basically, you can set up all of these value touch points and you can have a very clear roadmap of how the users or the members' journey would look like. So I think that's very powerful as a startup founder. So you can basically have much more power when you kind of work out your model. And when you want to engage your stakeholders, it doesn't stop with one, right? It's not just a user, but anyone can turn your stakeholder right now if you have the right model. So I think that's what I love most about it. I mean, we will have a lot of things to share a bit later on. So I think I'll just stop it right there and maybe listen to other panelists' stories.
Great. Yeah, that's a very insightful, like, you know, especially like, yeah, from the start, like the community feels ownership of like, you know, whatever are the values and like, you know, things provided by the DAO. So that's a really amazing point. Next, maybe Ingi, would you like to like give a brief introduction about how you got started with like code states and states DAO, and yeah, like how's it going?
For sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm Ingi Kim. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Code Stage. It's the biggest coding bootcamp in Korea. We've been running the code stage for almost over 7 years, from one-person company to now 250 employee companies. We basically build the developer community through our educational program for over 7 years. We really believe our students and developers are core part of our success. But in traditional startup, we cannot make an incentive alignment structure for the students and developers who contribute to the code stage. We can make a stock option for our employees, but we cannot distribute the ownership of the code stage to the students and developers in our community. So after running the code stage, the startup for over 7 years, I realized the Web3 can change this incentive alignment with users and contributors in our organization. That's why we started the Stage DAO, which is a decentralized incubator for individuals, developers in Web3. So now we are experimenting many incentive alignment structure for our Stage DAO. So we haven't launched our Stage token fully yet, but we are experimenting the NFT membership in our DAO and also the Stage non-transferable Stage token for just our early contributors to have the ownership in the Stage DAO. So yeah, so I believe Web3 need much more developers to build on the real use case. So we have around 7,000 developer communities. They are not all in the Web3. Most of them are building in Web2 startups. But we really want to make our community of developers to jump into the Web3 ecosystem. So now we run the Learn to Earn Fellowship program, which is people can earn crypto incentives while learning and mentoring others. And yeah, so that I think the distribution of the ownership at Stage DAO would be really powerful to align the incentives and distribute to the ownership to anyone, anywhere in the world, and for our early contributors. And yeah.
Wow, that's really insightful, and it's very interesting, like, because you have Web2 developers seeing all the ethos and like values of like Web3, so it can become like a very smooth bridge for like them to like come on to this Web3 platforms as well. Thanks a lot for sharing that, Ingi. Aman, would you like to maybe like run us through a little bit like about like what made you motivated to like become part of this like sub DAO of like YGG and like in India like and working as a
Right.
DAO, yeah.
So for me, I think it was pretty simple. Because just to give some context, I've been in the gaming industry in India since 2013. I started out as a blogger and then worked at companies like NVIDIA and Gamer Connect in order to grow the gaming industry at a very grassroots level in the country over the last 5-6 years as well, right? So I was always interested in gaming. What got me interested in crypto was when I heard the word gaming crypto, right? And that's when I was like, what exactly is that? Today, I kind of understand that at a much deeper level. IndiGG is also, by the way, not just a sub DAO. We are our own entity. So we have our own um, leadership, everything going out, working
Wow.
own
Oh,
things, right?
amazing.
So while YGD does its own thing, we are doing our own thing in the Indian subcontinent. And where everything for us makes sense is that it's very simple. Like everyone's talking about NFTs here, right? In gaming, the yearly revenue is $140 billion in about 2021, right? 40%, 30 to 40% of that revenue goes into microtransactions. These are things like gems in Clash of Clans or skins in Valorant, stuff like that, right? And these are all technically digital assets, and these can all be NFTs. In the current form, in the Web2 form, these are not trackable, and whatever money you're investing in these things, it's not going to ever be available to you again in any form. It's a direct sync, right? You're not getting any value back, right?
Right.
But for Web3, all of this can be trackable, can have a lot of value, and you can trade them with your friends. If you say do not want to play a game tomorrow, or you want to give your asset and trade it for something else that someone else has, that is possible in Web3 between the games, as well as inside games, as well as between games, right? But what excites me is that we are at very early stages at opening these doors, and this is possible at a very technical level because of what Web3 offers. And it wouldn't make sense for us to have an organization in Web3 without being a DAO, right? So it won't, if our Web2 models will not work for us in this new kind of future, I guess. So yeah, that's why for us, and for me particularly, it was very easy when I came across gaming crypto, because I've been a gamer all my life, and all of this makes too much sense to me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, in terms of like when it is about like, like gaining ownership of your assets, like how can you like have ownership unless you also have ownership of the organization that's generating them, and like also like
Yes,
you're working and
completely.
interacting with like, so yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. Wow, that was really amazing. Like, such a diverse set of viewpoints to like look at like DAOs. It's really very insightful and educational. Just like, I think we have like maybe around like 10 more minutes to go. So like, how do you think like, like this DAOs that you guys are like working with, like, they are more impactful than like, regular organization, or like, like rather than operating them as a regular organization or a company, like how do you think it has generated like more impact? Like maybe we have like already like kind of touched it, but like, yeah, like just to see like, how it has already developed some impact, but also maybe in the coming times it can provide a huge impact. And maybe we can go in a opposite order this time, like Aman, maybe if you want to start off. Sorry to put the,
Sure,
yeah.
not a problem. No, I think in terms of impact, I think we have yet to see, what all of this is capable of. I think we are like in the 1997 of the internet. We're still a solid 10 years maybe away, or maybe it's less, but we're solid some time away before all of this comes down to the full potential, right? What excites again, because everything needs time to build up, and in order to provide use case. I
Right.
think we already have a lot of use cases, especially with NFTs, like I described. People already so the concept of a guild. So IndiGG is a guild and a DAO, right? We're like a gaming guild and DAO. The concept of a guild always came from gaming long back, from actually way back in early 2000s, when you would play games like World of Warcraft and RuneScape, right? And the objective was pretty simple. It was a bunch of people would come together in order to go after an objective, and in order to reach that objective, multiple people would have to do multiple things. Some would look after the treasury, some would look after equipments, while people would actually do the actual fighting, right? That is what an organization kind of is, right?
Right.
Since we are in gaming, of the gaming industry of Web3, it makes sense for us to call ourselves a guild. What makes us a DAO and what makes it impactful is because we can share this value with all our members, right? This does not traditionally happen in, like Daniel mentioned. Traditional equity and things like that have a lot of barriers, right? So sharing of value is a much harder than sharing it in something like in a DAO, right? And this also helps us not only have a lot of integral parts of our community who believe in us directly share in our wins, but also when we are going
Right.
down, we have this strong community who will help us, back us up, right? If they believe in the projects that we are doing, right? This is a very community driven thing. And
Yeah.
because, like I said, it makes sense from a gaming end. So I think the idea, if you just see a gaming organization suddenly controlling the assets, and those assets in games having value, suddenly all of that coming together, this has never happened in Web2 before. Like those assets in games were never trackable or centralized, right? Or decentralized, right? These were all centralized assets. So if
Right.
I was company that made a game, I could duplicate them and sell it back to you. You wouldn't be able to kind of even see, right, when it was duplicated, minted, and so on, right? I have an infinite supply,
Yeah.
right? So this makes a lot of sense. I think we are yet to see the
Mhm.
true potential of what a DAO can do
Right.
in gaming side of things in Web3, and it's very exciting to
Yeah.
wait and watch what happens, I guess. But we're doing very
Yeah.
impactful
But
in DGG as well to make that
yeah.
happen.
But it was a really great point, like, that like instead of like just users or consumers, it's community who's there during good times as well as bad time. Thanks a lot, Aman. Like that was really amazing. Ingi, would you like to add your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think the DAO is a community of the distributed ownership and the governance. And one thing, the Web3 is powerful because before the Web3 users, mostly internet users, they don't own any ownership of the services they contribute to. But now through the tokens and NFT, make users and contributors, even though they are not employees, they can now own the services, internet services through the tokens and NFT. It's very powerful, I think, because it turned the early contributors and users into the owners of the services. And in the DAO, we are giving the ownership of the DAO to our early contributors and the users and developers and our community members. They make more aligned incentive alignment through the whole the DAO activity. And I think that through decentralized ownership, our members in a DAO feel more empowered to see the idea shared and execute on our DAO organization. Because of the community incentive participation, more people will uh, have the opportunity to have a successful journey into the Web3. Yeah, uh, uh, so to sum up, our members in the stage DAO are now the owners of the DAO, and they are all share the ownership, not just core team or VCs or the founders. Our contributors of the stage DAO are all owners, and I think it's very impactful and powerful
Yeah.
than the startup, normal startup.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. Like, that's a very amazing point as well. Like, it's like dynamic, like, from real time, like, they are earning as well. Like, instead of like, sometime in the future, yeah, you will get the returns and everything. Like, they keep getting like more of the ownership and the incentives in a very dynamic format. Whereas, yeah, like in regular organizations, that's like difficult to do. Thanks a lot for that point, Inkip. Um, Nicole, would you like to add some points there?
Um, yeah, so I think, well, pretty much I want to tackle this question maybe also from another angle, that I think a lot of people like is asking and making us to choose between DAO and, a centralized kind of entity. I mean, a lot of people denounce the centralized models as well, especially Web3 people. But I think it's going to take some time, for us to actually be out there and have some real kind of use case with DAO. I mean, we do have for now, but then pretty much if, the use case is, if we have a killer use case for it, if it's actually, it can speak volume about what we have been doing in the Web3 space, I think it's still taking a very long time to do that. And when you talk about governance as well, right? So I mean, there's always the question of regulation, overregulation, unregulated, which one is better, for mass adoption. And I think the DAO is still in a very gray area that pretty much it's still far from mass adoption. So I think from my point of view, what we are trying to do here is not something that replace the traditional model. I think one of the better kind of values of DAO is about collaboration. So people can join in, people can be part of as many DAOs as possible. They can be part of a centralized kind of model, and they can be part of the DAO, and it doesn't kind of create sort of like direct interest conflict, in my opinion. So for example, if we are doing the launchpad, decentralized launchpad for a project, it doesn't mean that we're replacing the normal launchpad. People can actually go for different kind of launchpad kind of services, or kind of services just to do this. So I think pretty much it's going to be about collaboration, and we can actually expand this kind of DAO in a much more scalable and in a much more, I think, dynamic and engaging way, as IndiGG mentioned. So I think on top of that, of course, we have the transparency, we have the programmability, we have the incentives to be there, and they are very powerful tools, just to engage people and tie them to this kind of DAO. So it's not like a kind of a rigid model, that top-down model, top-down governance model that you have to follow. Pretty much when we give them the right incentives, if we are transparent about how people would be able to engage, I think this would give us a much better chance of scale other than the other model through collaboration. So I think that's like what I've been seeing here. And when we talk with people, I think the idea of joint collaboration, it's actually much more exciting, than, let's say, killing the competition or taking over the whole game or something like that. So I think that's what I think about this. And I do hope that, of course, I mean, as far as we progressed, there's a lot of room for us to increase our adoption, but through collaboration, I think, not through competition.
Right. Yeah, like, putting everyone on a more collaborative platform. But I really love the point that, like, yeah, like it has to not always replace the traditional models. There are like some things like we can benefit from there as well. But yeah, like driving more collaborative work going forward, like setting the frameworks for that. I think, yeah, like you said, like DAOs can really define that in the coming times for like all kinds of organizations. All right, Daniel, like your viewpoints on this?
Yeah, it's I think Nicole hit it on the head. I think that one of the biggest things for me that I saw and I really appreciated when we turned like some of what we were doing before HanDAO became a thing was the fact that you're able to, like, DAOs are essentially just a coordination tool, and then what you do with them can turn into venture specific coordination and mechanisms to enforce particular types of behavior based on the tokenomics. And then you also have, I think, this emergent class of social DAOs that are sort of removed from the investment style tokenomics for those venture DAOs. But what I did see is that, right, we were able to get so much amazing talent that was contributing to HanDAO that you would have never been able to coordinate with, because they all work at different companies. Like I represented like these developers and some of the blockchain infrastructure space, but we had people who were running their own artist studios. We had people who own their own museums in Korea, people who represented like the traditional financial system, crypto hedge funds, VCs, artists themselves. They all were able to kind of come together. They were like, clearly some of the best of their industry and field and domain. And now we all got to work together on something. And right, if you make a company, like you have to like sort of poach people. You have to like, hey, come and work for us exclusively. We'll pay you a lot of money. And it's very difficult to get that level of talent all working together. But within like a DAO situation, you have, right, this sort of meaningfully decentralized group of people who all are able to collaborate and then get that type of reward or contribution from what they put into it. And another really key thing for me with sort of what we've been seeing with this experimentation on allowing people to make sense of what they are contributing has been sort of that separation between investment DAO frameworks being not compatible with social DAO frameworks, which I think is important. Quick TLDR is basically, how can you have a social DAO that rewards contribution for tokens and gives governance rights based on your contributions and allow those tokens to be sold to some other third party, which completely breaks it down, right? So let's say, for example, I contribute to a DAO, and then my governance, the tokens that I receive as a result of my contributions are going to give me governance rights. And if I'm able to sell them onto a public market, then another unnamed individual who has never contributed like a single hour to the DAO now has the ability to buy that and have governance rights over that social DAO. So I think a lot of people were kind of seeing these investment DAOs exist first, and then they're trying to copy them over to the social DAOs. I think that's perhaps the wrong way. And I do see it as an opportunity for people to establish better structures to incentivize that good behavior without having to be caught in that tokenomics trap. Because at HanDAO, we had, seen the venture DAO frameworks, especially what we saw with like Metacartel and the DAO house stack. And we tried to apply it and we just couldn't make those tokenomics work. So we had to split it into like that ventures and then the social DAO side. I think the key here is not to rely on that type of altruism, but I think we can take like a page from how like the Bitcoin network even maintains its consensus within a set of infrastructure service providers that don't necessarily have to buy into the ideology of the Bitcoin network itself, but they are incentivized, right? Their behavior is incentivized. Bitcoin miners may not care about decentralization, self-sovereignty, or censorship resistance, but because they are rewarded for the work they've done, they do it. They obey and download the software, and other people who do value those properties are willing to pay for the rewards that these miners who don't care get. So you can still have like this incentivization loop that still exists. And so those are some of the things that I found quite interesting and intriguing with the DAO space.
Right. Yeah. Your point about like, access to like talent and like the best minds and like all of these like different thoughts, like it was really amazing. And yeah, of course, like, we cannot face like, the same DAO model. I think what's like happening quite a lot. Yeah, they're trying to face like the same DAO model. So each kind of like community of people will need their own like customization. And it's a very amazing point. Like, thanks a lot. Like, there was a really amazing point to close today's DAO panel and discussion with. And thanks so much for taking the time out. And I hope like all of you guys get to visit India soon and like, engage more deeply with the Indian Web3 community. We are all like, really like looking forward to that. And thanks a lot for taking the time today. Thank you very much.